Hi, welcome back. I'm Ellen Siegel, author of Be Happy No Matter What, 5 Steps to Inner Freedom, psychotherapist, life consultant, spiritualist, for those of you who don't know me. And today I'm here with Michael Rosenbaum, who I'm going to ask to say a few words about himself. We've done some videos and podcasts together on the downloads that Michael gets during meditations. And those can be found on Enlightening Realizations, which is my podcast channel. And Michael will share where they can be found on his. And today we're coming together to talk about relationships. And I'll say more about that after you introduce yourself, Michael. Welcome.
Okay, thanks. I'm just so thrilled, to be here. And Ella and I have a long-term relationship ourselves. And I'm a hypnotherapist, a regression therapist, a spiritual life coach. That's what I like to do. And I like to help clients kind of get unstuck from, or what I would say, demagnetized from the patterns that don't serve them in their life anymore, make some permanent transformations, and then learn about some other parts of themselves that aren't just lower mind, ego driven, as I would call it, and deal with a higher wisdom that everybody has and that I've discovered over many years. And actually, Ellen and I have been in schools and discovered that together. And I love, relationships. I know we're probably going to be talking about our, personal relationships with our partners, but everything's a relationship, and I treat them all the same as best I can. And there are things that get in the way of that, right? Depending on one's judgments or one's training. And so how to not let that get in the way, I think, is the key to having um, an intimate and good relationship with everybody in your life. Because as Ellen and I have learned over the years, and we get this message deeper and deeper, that we are all interconnected. So what happens to you or how you think and feel is just as important to me as what happens to me, because we affect each other. And the podcast that I have is called Path to Enlightenment. And so you can certainly listen. There's a lot of things Ellen and I did together. I have some things I did on my own, just to really kind of spiritually focused about things I've discovered about life and wanted to share them. And I also have a meditation group that I do every couple of weeks on Zoom. It's a spiritual meditation. So anybody's invited to it who are interested in it. They just have to contact me and I send them a link.
Oh, say how they should contact you.
All right. So I have probably either by email, which is Michael R at alternativechoices.org, or you can go to my website, alternativechoices.org, and hit the contact button and send it to me. Any of those two ways, and then just say you're interested in being in the meditation group, and then I'll send you a link. And I also, if you look on the website and you say, well, hey, maybe there's something for me here, then I always want to have a phone consult for free, 20 minutes or so, maybe 30 minutes, just to discover a little bit about what you're looking for, where you are, where you want to be. And then I can see if there's something I can help you with. And if it is, I can tell you that, and then you can see if it's a good fit for you or not.
Great. And at the end of this video, if you're watching on YouTube, there'll be a screen with our contact information on it.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Great. So I was saying to Michael before we got on that this is a several year desire of mine for us to have a conversation. We're both in long-term marriages. This year it's 2023, and I've been married since 1971, and you've been married since
1978. So in fact, our
Oh.
anniversary is not this Sunday is our
Oh, well
anniversary.
then how nice. Happy anniversary.
45 years.
And we did have an opportunity where we got together this past year for the first time, the four of us, which was really a lovely experience. And as Michael was saying, Michael and I have been studying in a spiritual school with a teacher for 20 years. And so Michael has heard me process challenges that I've encountered in my long-term relationship. And I have been privileged to hear him process and share. And so through that experience, it's so great. I can speak for myself how great it is, because I don't know another person in a male body who's had a, to my mind, traditional experience, to my knowledge, and conventional experience in marriage. And so to hear, having heard Michael share about his growth over the years and things that the person in the role of his wife has said that triggered him, I could relate to those things and knew that those things were coming out of my mouth, triggering the person who's in the role of my husband. So I got boomeranged awarenesses, working on myself and hearing things that would come through me that, oh, I took for granted. Maybe I was a little self-righteous about, because I could do the know-it-all, you know? And where there were times where my husband perceived me as critical, where I would say, I'm not being critical. These are just my feelings, or whatever that was. And then when I heard Michael sharing from the inside, I really started to appreciate what my husband could be experiencing on his inside. And my perspective is always, out of respect to the other person, I like to not presume that I know what's going on in my husband. Even though for years I insisted that I knew. Well, I was wrong. And, and that was a good awakening for me. Nevertheless, trying to change someone else is not the direction to go. You want to work on yourself. And then if by surprise some things shift, what a bonus that is. Okay, so that's my perspective on the kind of relationship where you come together with some vows. Now, it's okay I talk a little bit, Michael, about this?
Sure.
Okay, because then we'll get into it together. And then I want to hear, you know, what you think about some of this, because we haven't really spoken about this, you and I. And that I had a teacher once, a metaphysical teacher, and he said that we take the vows that we made in all the marriages we ever had, in all the lifetimes, we bring those vows into the current marriage. And wow, that really hit me like a brick. And so that really helped me appreciate the echo of things, whether from my childhood, witnessing my parents, absorbing what society says a marriage should be, or my religious background, what a marriage should be. When it adds to the idea of, I came into marriage, no matter how young and innocent I might have appeared to myself, that I came in with a lot of baggage, unconscious, spewing it out all over the place, and having no awareness, maybe a little, maybe none. So anyway, and I can only speak from the perspective, personally, of meeting my partner when we were young. We met in high school, and we lived around the corner from each other. So anyway, that's that by way of introduction. That's what I bring to the table here. So Michael, share something along some lines where you're concerned.
Well, I would say, as I look at the relationship with my wife, that the biggest change was really the change in me
Mm,
that made a difference
mm,
in my experience of the relationship, because everything is perception. So my perception changed as the years went by. I know I can remember clearly when we first met, and we got married really within 7 or 8 months of meeting each other. But I remember, and I was just kind of starting on my spiritual journey at the time, and I remember why I wanted to get married to this person. In fact, I asked myself about it, because it's kind of a funny story. I don't know if I've ever told you that story, but when we first got together, there was tremendous kind of attraction for each other on different levels, and we just felt really comfortable with each other, and we immediately wanted to start living together. And after living together for a few months, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, broached the idea of that we should get married. Well, I got to tell you, that freaked me out because I'm like, wait a minute, put the brakes on. This is, I need to get to know you better, was what my mind was saying, right? And it kind of flustered me. And my wife was very calm about it. But, 2 or 3 weeks later, she'd bring the idea up again. And I said, and I would have the same reaction. Well, this happened about 2 or 3 different times. And I guess I had the presence of mind to realize that the problem here wasn't with my girlfriend. Problem was with Michael, because she was really calm and about the whole thing. She wasn't pushy or anything. She was just clear and would bring it up. And I was, like nuts about it. And I don't get nuts about things that easily. So I said, well, there must be something going on with me about it. What is that? So I didn't have a lot of skills like I do now for introspection, but I did have a meditation practice, which I've had, for a long time. And I just had the idea to kind of look inside myself and ask the question, what do I need to know about this person to want to marry her? And what am I going to know in a year that's different than what I know now?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the question I posed to myself.
And how old were you?
27.
Wow.
27. So, and I got an answer right away. And the answer I got was, you need to know what her heart is like.
Mm.
Well, I knew what her heart was like. I mean, I didn't need a year to know that.
I have goosebumps.
I knew what her heart was like. And so I realized that, I might find out some things about her. We probably don't get along at certain, there's going to be rough spots, I'm sure. But that's not what I would base the decision about whether we should get married or not. It was based on her heart, who she was in her heart, and how she was with me in that way. And since I knew the answer to that, and I, felt comfortable with that, then I went back to her and I said, okay, let's get married. So that's how our relationship started.
Wow. A lot of consciousness.
Yeah. Now, did things come up for me together? You bet they did. Was I happy about those things coming up? No, not really. So we had our entanglements and things, but I never, but there was always that part of her that I was aware of.
Mm.
right? And, you know, as we got closer together and as we got married and so on, you know, then she could sometimes, as you heard a zillion times over, right? She could be a certain way. It's like she forgot about being that way with me. When she got triggered, you know, she would express from that place. She wasn't expressing from her heart. She was expressing from
Right,
that place.
right.
Right. So, you know, those were the challenges that we faced.
Mm.
But, and like you said, trying to, in the beginning, I'm trying to change her. I'm sure
Right.
she's trying to change me too, which I didn't like. But I realized that she said something very smart to me early on. I didn't like it, but it was wisdom. And of course, I was beginning to study in this field of consciousness, and you know, it wasn't hypnotherapy at the time; it was something else. But you know, I was on this journey, and I was learning a lot of good things, right? And I was teaching people some of these things. I had some clients, I had, you know, some groups I went to, even some meditation groups I led, and so on. And I developed my perceptive abilities, so I would perceive what was going on, and it wasn't inaccurate,
Mm.
you know. But if I preached that to my wife and told her what I saw, she just didn't like that. And she flat out said, Michael, you are not my teacher. I don't want to be taught by you in that way. And so I had to honor that. And the funny thing is, she could have a friend or we could go to a class together and they could say the exact same thing that I said, and she got it. When I said it, no. So I learned that that wasn't going to happen as best as I could, as best I could hold myself back, you know, from playing that role, even though I saw it, right? And she also, I think this is really important in relationships, is she processes things differently than I do.
What do
And
you mean? What do you mean by processes
well,
differently?
if there's a problem, and if she perceives a problem in herself, or when I perceive a problem in myself, then I have a certain way that I handle that. I want to work on it overtly. I want to process it. I want to do introspection. I want to meditate on it. I want to call up my friend Ellen and have a session together. You know, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be very proactive in taking responsibility and working it through like that. But my wife, that is not how she processes. She won't do that. It used to frustrate the heck out of me. I mean, some of our arguments would look like, okay, well, what do I would state the problem. She wouldn't disagree with the problem. And I'd say, and what are you going to do about it? It's like she wouldn't approach it that way, but she would approach it her way, whatever I had to honor her process, and that she wasn't going to do it the way Michael does it. And that's okay. Because that she still has this great heart, and that wasn't going to affect it one way or the other. And she has to come to her own awakenings in her own way. And that's not the way that Michael does it. But she does things that I think are really amazing that it just would never do. I mean, it just never occurred to me to do.
Mm.
And I've learned a lot from being with her because she's very family oriented and connected oriented. She stays in touch with her family. Even if they abuse her, it doesn't matter to her.
Mm.
She stays with them and she's there for them.
Mm.
Even if they do them, like, look what they're
Mm.
doing. That doesn't matter to her.
Mm.
Keeping the family connection is really important. That was not how I grew up. I didn't learn that. That's been a big teaching for me. I
Mm.
really admire that in her. her persistence about that.
Mm.
But then she'll ask me to do the same thing she does. It's just not in my DNA. So like a couple of weeks ago, she says, you ought to call your brother up. You haven't talked to him in a long time. Really, I have no feeling to want to do that. I love my brother. And I call him up and we get together once in a while. But it doesn't do it for me like when she connects with her family.
Mhm.
I don't know why, but anyway, so she's like, I was trying to tell her to do it a certain way. She tries to tell me to do it a certain way, but it's just not my way. But I love that she connects in that way. I see the beauty of it. And she's brought it, and it's made my life much richer that she does that. And so we actually do have family get-togethers, and my sister now wants to get together on holidays, and she's kind of brought that into our family. I mean, one of the things she does, I never would have done this, never in a million years, right? She calls everybody in her family up on their birthday and sings happy birthday to them. Never would have done that, but here I am on the phone.
It's so much fun because I do that, Michael.
You do? I never would have
Gary?
even occurred to me to even do that, but it's fun. It is fun. So we do that, and so my family, at least my sister, not my brother, even my brother, they'll call me up and sing happy birthday to me because my wife got me to start this thing, and she keeps like an eagle. She's on it, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And but I think it's wonderful. But it's not something I would have thought of doing, But it's just part of my life and part of my life now that we do stuff like that. And I'm as you know, I'm an inner journeyer. There's nothing I like better than to explore consciousness and explore spirituality and meditate and go on all these journeys and learn. And I mean, that to me is the most fun in life. My wife likes to travel places and travel to her family and meet with them and interact with them. And really, if it wasn't for her, I'd probably never do that. I'm not saying that's good.
Right.
I'm just telling you, that's how now, would I, if she were to pass away or whatever, would I do that? Probably certainly more than I used to do it. But to her extent, probably not. But that's what she brings, and that's her heart. That's what she brings to the equation, and it's beautiful. It informs me. It teaches me. She's been a good teacher in that sense. That's the way I look at it. I don't know what I've taught her, but she teaches me that, and it's just fun. I just think it's really fun to watch. We have a granddaughter, as you know, who just turned 4, and but they live in California. They live I live in Connecticut, so it's across the country. So we don't get to see them that often, but we do FaceTime every week, But my wife was determined that this grandchild would know her intimately, even though we were so far away. And so, we'd visit 3 or 4 times a year, but she would do things to build that relationship. Like, I'll give you some instances. They're in California, right? We're in Connecticut. We're in the winter, it snows. Well, my granddaughter's never seen snow, right? They don't know what it is. So she would go out and we'd do a FaceTime, and we'd make a snowman. She'd make a snow angel. She would say, "This is snow." Or now they live in like a very expensive part of California, so they don't have a big place, a small place. We have a fairly big place, and we love to garden. So well, springtime, whatever, we go out to the garden, the
Mm,
video, and we show her the plants. We show her what we're
mm,
doing. And when you get old enough to
mm,
come out here, which, I mean, she does that kind of thing.
mm,
And now our granddaughter is of the age where she's really enjoying being read to, and
mm,
bigger stories and things. She has a bigger attention span. And so my wife, wants to read to her all the time. So she's
mm,
out there, she's advocating for that, with my son and daughter-in-law. And here's a really funny story. Just happened. It just happened. I was in awe of it. I really was.
mm,
My wife sews. She's a sewer, right? She used to sew her own clothes when she was a teenager and a young
mm,
adult. She's a quilter. She loves
mm,
to sew. I mean, she's good at it. And so she started making clothes for my granddaughter, right? So
mm,
she's made her a couple of dresses and things. But she gets this idea talking with her friends. And my daughter-in-law, they live in LA, and she's a big LA Dodgers fan, big time, right? And so even when we went out there, they took us to a Dodgers game, and she just loves that, right? My son couldn't care one way or the other, but she's really into the Dodgers and so on. So what does my wife do? She finds this pattern and she buys this material that says LA Dodgers all over it. And she makes an LA Dodgers dress for her granddaughter. And she sends it over there, mails it out, and she gets a call just the other day, and they're like thrilled. And her daughter-in-law is like totally thrilled with this
mm,
Dodgers
mm,
dress.
mm,
And my wife also said, what books do you have over there? Because we have some, but what are the ones you like? And she orders them. And the granddaughter, she spent like a half an hour reading to her from
mm,
those books. But she made that happen.
mm,
Absolutely made that happen by her dedication and her desire to have that kind of relationship.
mm,
I'm in awe of it. I really am. I never would have done that. I never even thought to do that. I never would have thought. I felt I'd be impinging on somebody's
mm,
privacy. I
mm.
mean, I don't know. It just never would have occurred to me to do that.
I think you're bringing up such a significant point to appreciate in relationships how different we all are. We might have, we might all have some experience with the same feelings, even some of the same thoughts, but we're all configured differently. And to be in awe of it is to really appreciate the, I'm going to say, the value of the difference. And that when we're open, I can speak about having been what I experienced narrow-minded for so many years, I think afraid to let in any new thoughts, or maybe just habituated into, a certain type of training by my family or whatever that was. And how can I, whether it's patience with ourselves to keep working on ourselves, and then recognizing that I think I wanted my husband to be just like me or have the same values as me. And the truth is, we do have the same values. We just come at them so differently. And, there were books on men are from Mars, women are from Venus, as if it's traditionally male, traditionally female. I'm a big fan of appreciating another person in their uniqueness, doing my best to take off the labels and things like that, because it helps me appreciate a person more like I'd appreciate a work of art. Different artists, you can't compare them. Really, I would not compare different artists or different types of art, that each sort of calls for its own appreciation. So when you say that and you shared about, your wife's approach and something of value and going after it, dedication. And I could say, I know you in different areas of your life, and you have that same quality, just not in the same content areas. So, in terms of in social work, one of the big focus points was content and process. And that content changes. Everybody's content is different. Our approach, whether it's the degree of our consciousness, whether or not, and how we observe ourselves, and like you use the term introspection, I think everybody's doing that to some degree. However, not maybe with an impartial observer, maybe with a judgmental observer. And then to me is like, how can I get along? How can I get along? I mean, my husband and I, we had a different start. I was 18. I had a number of boyfriends at the time, suitors, and my father passed away suddenly. And there was a little joke. My father used to kid me. He'd say, if you're going to go out with more than one guy at one time, you just better get their names straight. Okay. And so my father passes away suddenly. And in our religious tradition, we're in my house and people come to visit us, the funeral's the next day. And I'm sitting there and there's like 4 guys, 5 guys visiting me. And I'm thinking I really don't think I had the maturity. So I was younger. I was like 18, 19. I didn't have that maturity that I hear that you raised the question, okay, what am I going to learn, in a year that I don't know now, to go into meditation, get the answer immediately, accept the answer, and then take an action. I mean, to me, that is an expression of human emotional maturity. So I'm sitting there with these guys around me and I'm thinking my father's in heaven, like smiling, because he liked me to have people to choose from, and whoever I was going to choose from. This is a very conventional view on marrying your daughter off. She'll be taken care of, whatever all that was in his mind. And and I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking, he's smiling. Okay. So the next thing that happened was I was hysterical for weeks and weeks and weeks. My father was a mentor to me. I had an adversarial relationship with my mother. So I wasn't crazy about her. And here, my friend who I loved, maybe I had him up on a pedestal. Some boyfriend told me that too, None of us are ever going to make it with you, Ellen, while you have your father on a pedestal. He was a great teacher, right? He was a little older than me, but he nailed me. He says, and you know what? You have an inferiority complex. In those days, that he gave me a diagnosis. It was the greatest thing. I'm grateful for that. So, and that got me thinking. I had my father, so blah, blah, blah. So, but nevertheless, of these young men who were in my life, there was one that held me while I was hysterical crying and couldn't stop crying for weeks. And in his arms, I'm introspecting. I'm thinking, oh my God, how could I feel so good while I feel so horrible? This is the man for me. Wow. And what I was experiencing, not with cognition, with intuition, was his heart. And that has borne true throughout our long life together. And I thought, oh, I like this feeling. So when I'm miserable, I'm having a feeling I like. And then as time went on, I went to different workshops and learned different ways to appreciate my feelings and a language of feelings, and then overdoing the feelings and not letting them run my life. And, all the things that we help other people appreciate about themselves. And get some distance and awareness with some impartial, which is really non-dual, appreciation of ourselves. So here I was having a controversial experience inside myself, misery and bliss at once, and then somehow coming to greater understandings of that. Anyway, so I was really the hard person in our relationship. And the person who's my husband, I think he just adores me. And he would get a kick out of different things. And that part that where he felt so criticized by me, and let me tell you something, I was critical. And in those years when he would say, stop criticizing me, I say, I'm not criticizing you. And believe me, I was really trying to be nice. It was triggering his unaware experience with his mother through the years. And ultimately, in our relationship, which is not a topic for this short time together, but may come out if we do some more of this as a series, we did get divorced in a wonderful way. It was a very constructive thing, and we didn't know that we were going to come back together. It was definitely a clear break. We did remain friends. And then he shared with me after a 7-year break that he realized that every word that came out of my mouth, he heard his mother's voice. And wow, what an awareness. And that broke a spell in our relationship. And I call it a spell because it was like a trance we were both in. I think when we came together as two not so mature individuals, he in his way and me in my way, we like woke up and said, wow, oh, that's over. I think that's what happened for him. And during that time, we lived separately. I was not aware. I mean, I tried to, the years we were together, to encourage him to grow in the ways that he didn't say to me what your wife said to you about, I'm not your student, you're not my teacher. Nevertheless, it was clear because it was like I was talking a language that wasn't even close. And in the time where he didn't hear my voice, where he could go home and we didn't know that was happening till reflecting later, that during that time he heard his own voice without whatever was triggering him from my voice. Because even though we got together twice a week, which was a little bit like a vacation, and I would stay over, but we knew we were not married. We had no obligation to each other than we shared a child and were very responsible in those ways, that we then could share. And he started to share about his process, not the way that he came to those things, but the outcome of it, these realizations that he had, that we just knew together that we're supposed to be together. Because we'd come together knowing, we had a knowing that we were going to be together in this lifetime. So the divorce thing really threw us both off, that it was the fitting thing at the time. And then when we came back together, it was really great. And he's a quiet person. And I'm not such a quiet person. And my mother, I remember years ago, when it looked like we were going to get engaged or whatever, she had said to me, she says, I think he's a little too quiet for you. I went. And it's been a fitting relationship. And I remember always knowing that no matter how critical or about I was in my mind about him, I knew that my work was my own. Because I was never comfortable with blaming another person. I did it as a younger person, but it never felt right. It never felt right. And when I went inside to ask what help here, what's best for me in my own growth, and that's to focus on myself. And so when we came back together inside, I mean, and outside myself, I could only laugh because I could only see where I changed. I mean, I don't know if he changed. I don't even care, you know? So I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting to me. And I totally appreciate him. I think it's the greatest thing that he was still interested in being with me. Because my carryings on over the years, really, I was like, I don't think I would ever stay with somebody like me. Although I did say, honey, I'm working on it. I'm really working on myself. I'm so sorry I'm working on myself. I'm really working on myself, you know. So, yeah.
Well, I tell you, not for maybe, another time, but I think it would be really interesting to talk about a spiritual relationship in marriage
Mm.
and how I've come to look at that, how I've come to take some of those areas where I'm trying to change somebody or they process it differently,
Mhm.
how I came to make my peace with that. And that was really a spiritual process,
Mhm.
continues to go on. So
Mm.
it might be interesting to have a discussion
I
on
would
that.
like that discussion too, because there are certain things that stand out in my spiritual studies that woke me up to appreciate. Here's like just a little tidbit, and people have heard this from therapists and coaches that what you don't like in another person, and I like to say it this way, you have a tiny little pinhead of that in you that's really bothering you, like an eyelash or a splinter, and that it's annoying you about this other person only because you have a little piece of it that you would not like to look at in yourself. And you could say, well, maybe you have a lot of it, but I wouldn't go that far. You just need to have a little of it to really be upset about someone else's behavior. So, I mean, that was like a spiritual catalyst that opened up many doors of my personal spiritual work that then, because you mentioned it right at the beginning of our conversation today, where a lot of people don't know that the work that we do on ourselves radiates out because we're part of an energetic network that anything any one of us does affects the whole of us. And I think in the last number of years, I've really come to accept that in a very practical way. It's the same thing as when a group of us meditate together. It's like adding many candles together to light up a room type of a thing.
Well,
But
I think that would be a fascinating discussion, how we both approach that, bringing spirituality into our relationships. Because I have a very particular way that I've discovered that works for me, and it'd be fun to share that. And you can share more about how you can see, take responsibility for the triggers, that it's a part of me too, which is a great spiritual, truth and absolute truth, about that, that's where compassion actually stems from. So
yeah, and it really takes the if you have any antagonism in you, it takes that, it really dissolves that when you develop a compassion and an alignment with the person who you've been seeing as separate from you.
yeah.
So that was well said, Michael. So this feels like a good concluding point for this conversation today. Is something you want to add that comes to you, Michael?
Relationships, especially a marriage, is really about intimacy, learning intimacy. I think that's one of everybody's desires, is for that kind of loving intimacy. There's something so beautiful and refreshing and satisfying about that experience. And the way to create intimacy that I've discovered is to remove my walls. I'm the one that's putting up the walls to the intimacy. The ego mind wants to say, well, if they only acted that way, if they were this way, then we would be intimate. But I've discovered that that's really a lie. The truth is that there's some part of me, there's some wall, there's some part of me that's not willing to have that in some way. And when I'm willing to keep removing those walls, then intimacy is right there. So I would say that's something for people to ponder and think about. If you're not getting the kind of connection or intimacy that you're looking for, look in the mirror a little bit, and what parts of me am I holding back? Because in our spiritual work, as I've shared many times and we work together, that we're both seeking this intimacy with God consciousness or with the higher consciousness. And over and over and over again, as I've explored this, I've realized that consciousness is right there in this moment, waiting to come in. If I have to remove the wall, it can't come in if I have the wall up, but not because it's not being transmitted. I'm just not able to receive it. I'm putting up a barrier of some sort. And they're very subtle, these barriers. They're not so obvious. And as I remove them, then the intimacy is just there. And there's some fear involved in removing, for me, in removing these walls, because it feels vulnerable in some way or scary in some way. And you have to work through that in yourself and see what that's about. But if you're seeking intimacy, which I think everybody is, if you remove the walls to intimacy will be there in your life. 100%. I mean, it's not like maybe. So I think I'd like to leave everybody with that thought.
I think that when my husband and I divorced, it was in my mind because I could not bring about the intimacy that I was seeking. And I would say that then the rest of that work for myself was to remove those walls. And unbeknownst to me, he in his realm was doing that work and may not have even characterized it that way. nevertheless, I do believe that that's what happened. And I, like you, I sort of know that for sure, that if a person is seeking that, then to look for what the walls are inside myself and find someone to help you if you need help with that. And we're both really good at that because we have lots of our own experience with that, and still continue to dismantle different aspects of that are still subtle or whatever.
So you could say, I'm going to say,
Yeah.
that the in a relationship, in a committed relationship, right? And I think there is something to a committed relationship because it makes you not run away so fast.
Mm-hmm.
At least help me not run away so fast, because that would be my tendency. In a committed relationship, if we're seeking intimacy, the relationship shows you where intimacy is being blocked in you. It's a mirror for you, for where you, if you're willing to look at it that way, what's where you block intimacy. So if your intention is to have that intimacy, and most people that get married, it's their intention for that, then what shows up is everything that gets in the way of that. And if you're willing to work that through, you're left with deeper and deeper intimacy. So the intimacy I have now with my wife is way deeper than the intimacy I had when I first met her and was so excited to be with her. But from that standpoint, I can see how that's really deepened and grown. And that really, in a way, I'm like, I wouldn't want to start that process all over again. I mean, we really built something here. So,
and I think that's how it is in a committed relationship where two people are, I'm going to say, ethically committed to one another, whether you're under an umbrella of marriage or not. And early teachers of mine, June and Jim, Karen, my friend Karen, we've been working together for years in our personal growth. We even co-taught some college classes together. And we had June and Jim, who'd written a book, Let Go and Live, and they came and we took them out for lunch. And Jim said to Karen and I, he said, well, you have a marriage. We were talking about marriage. We said, we do. So, well, you are committed friends in a way that's beyond, what you might think friendship would be. And whether it's been there for each other or charge the other one with being honest. When you see me doing crap, I want you to tell me. Even if I balk, I want you to tell me. And so, for those who are listening to this or watching our conversation, that there are many different types of committed relationships you might find yourself in. And it's a way of being ethical and responsible to sort of marshal your own growth and hold yourself accountable to clarity and truth and your highest level of awareness and consciousness, for yourself and the people around you. So we hope you can use this information, share it with anyone that you think can benefit from it or would be open to it. And we're going to certainly look to at least another one of these where we talk about our spiritual approach to ourselves and to our relationship. So thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.